Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Latest in Travel podcast by Guestcentric. I'm really excited to have with me today Charlie Osmond, who is the co-founder of TripTease, which is a company dedicated to helping hotels enhance their digital presence and increase direct bookings. So first of all, welcome, Charlie. It's really great to have you.
Hello, thanks. Good to be here.
So it's really great to have you. And for those that might be listening and might not know much about you, do you mind just giving like a bit of introduction on like your background, your experience, and like how you got into hospitality, what made you choose this industry, and leading up until today?
Okay, the very quick background is I studied engineering at Oxford a good 20-something years ago. And when I left there, I decided to start my own business because ever since I was 5 years old, I wanted to be an entrepreneur as soon as I could say the word. And but I started in the dot-com boom bust times. So it was like year 2000, and started a analytics business and built and grew that for a decade, and then exited that company and was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I'd realized that I'd spent 10 years building my first. I was probably going to spend another decade doing the next one. And so I thought long and hard about what kind of industry I wanted to be in. And I felt, well, I'd really love to be in the travel industry. And then I had a personal sort of pain point around booking hotels that I found it really stressful. All the searching, all the websites, all the price comparison. And I just felt like I had an idea around how to improve that experience. So I thought, okay, here's an industry I'm really interested in, and there's a real pain point to go and fix. And at the time, travel accounted for something like 40% of online commerce. So it felt like, this is also just a really big market. And so there were many things that just made me think, okay, there's a problem to go fix. Let's help people book hotels direct more frequently. And that's it. So TripTease was born. And over the last 10 years, we've been helping hotels drive more direct bookings. And so my role has been, I guess, building the business, hiring the team, managing the team, the product plans, where we're going. And then I moved to the US, to New York City, which is where I'm based now, about 8-9 years ago, because it felt like it would be best to really try and drive growth in this market.
Great. And what, how, in your opinion, like what has changed like the most? What has been like the biggest change or like highlights like in your journey so far?
Well, it's funny because I couldn't name one thing, because the greatest positive surprise, and it just has been wonderful, is that since joining the travel industry, I can remember thinking to myself, well, first of all, I'll probably understand how this thing works in a couple of weeks. And that was wrong. I've even 5-10 years in, as I find out about virtual credit cards and payments, and I'm still learning. This industry is still full of learning. And then the other surprise for me was I didn't expect or appreciate how many seismic shifts there are that hit this industry, how big and significant the changes would be just all the time. And that's because Google decide to roll out a new layout, or TripAdvisor decide to change something significant. Booking.com changed the way, whether they want to be a merchant or of record, or all these really big changes made by a few often very large companies, or European legislation that have a really big ripple effect. And I've just loved that. I've loved the fact that every year or two something really significant happens, that maybe it doesn't change everything immediately, but it means, wow, over the next coming years there are going to be big shifts, and that means it's going to have an impact on guests, it's going to have an impact on hotels and what they need to do. And so you'll constantly feel you're having to solve the next problem, and I have loved that. So it's a series of seismic shifts, I think, has been the interesting change.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like, and also certain things, I mean, with like the advent, I guess, of like the chat GPT types of like AI and stuff, like just and then it pops onto the scene, and it's always been there, but like there's a big hype, and then it suddenly just explodes and develops like really fast. And like, even, for myself, sometimes it's a little bit of a whirlwind to keep up. But definitely always learning is the good, I guess the positive of this.
Oh, it would be incredibly boring and dull if we knew everything and fixed it 10 years ago. It
Yeah.
is the joy is in the constant learning and strategy games. Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of like, well, we'll be diving into those topics like a little bit deeper sort of later in our discussion. But I think as a person as well, like you also have quite a diverse and interesting experience in terms of travel. You're quite an adventurer. You like to sail and to, as far as I know, and also, you know, run marathons in interesting places. And in these kind of experiences, I guess, like what has been sort of the highlights from there?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I think it was because I was traveling a lot, going to the Arabian travel market, going to WTM in Singapore, and just constantly on a plane. I realized that I needed to have a hobby that would allow me to keep my sanity, and so I started doing a lot more running. And every time I had a travel trip, I was like, oh, I wonder where, if the week I'm going, there's a race, a marathon to do nearby. And so yeah, that led me to do one in Kazakhstan when I was over at ATM, which was great, except that I remember the last mile, the wardens who were kind of keeping the race out of the way of the traffic were stopped paying attention, and they let a bus drive across the race, and so I actually ended up running into a bus because I was too tired to slow, and so I just hit the side of a bus. That was one first and last time I did that in a marathon. And then North Korea was also a great one, which has some amazing hotels and a really extraordinary place to visit, and highly recommend that. I would love to do that again. It's just they kind of let the tourists in annually for the marathon, and I have to admit, it was a little bit of a egotistical adventure as well, because I'd seen the photos. You finish the North Korea marathon by running into a stadium, and in North Korea they build big stadiums, like 100,000 seater stadiums. So I am no Olympic athlete, but to be able to finish by a marathon running into a stadium with 60, 70,000 people cheering, was pretty special. Especially in North Korea, when they get the audience to cheer, it's not normal. It's not like people just cheer what they like. Each stand is given different colored palettes to hold up, paddles, sorry, and then in front at the front of each stand, they have someone telling that stand, here's what you have to cheer right now. So in unison, they're cheering for you as you run around. It's quite special.
And what was the route, if I may ask? And was it just mostly the capital, or was it like other?
Yeah, all through Pyongyang, very careful. It's the only time that you, as a Westerner, can actually have a little bit of freedom to run through the city, but you wouldn't really want to run off course. So it's quite extraordinary.
And in terms of the hospitality there, like what were sort of the moments, I guess, that really stood out to you that you're like, wow, this is a really good, because you mentioned also earlier that, you saw some, I guess, gaps with certain things in the industry that could be done better. And that's what kind of inspired you to launch and get into this space. So what were sort of some hospitality experiences there that really stood out to you that I guess other hotels could think about and possibly, apply?
I mean, I think in travels, you're constantly picking up these wonderful moments. And so a few experiences that stand out for me, I think one of the first really special hotels I ever went to stay at was Villa d'Este, where my wife and her family had been going like repeatedly. And I remember going to that property. It's one of the most amazing hotels on the banks of Lake Como. Really beautiful situation, or like set up. But the thing that was special about it, apart from the view, was were the waiters. And there was one particular like head waiter. I guess he'd been there 20 years, Ilio, who I remember he just knew everyone. And you may have only been there for 6 hours, and yet somehow he'd gotten to know you, and then you got welcomed back to dinner and welcomed to breakfast the next day, and they just made this incredible effort to get to know you and make you feel at home. And so I'll never forget that. In fact, we named one of our products after him, because he really stood out for me as what great hospitality is. Another little one that is in my mind is going to the Beverly Hills hotel. I remember it very specifically because I often arriving from off a plane, I'm tired, I'm grumpy, and you're kind of dragging your bags through the door and then dragging them up to the front desk. And this was the first, I think maybe only hotel I've ever been to where I can just like distinctly remember, first of all, the doors were all beautifully open for you, so there was no like dragging. That was great. But the receptionist at the desk it was like they ran out towards you at the door. So that little gap where you walk through the door and then you walk over to the reception, very often, particularly big hotels, you then go get in a queue and you're a bit, it's not a great experience. And here, the desk is made so that there are holes in the reception desk, and the receptionist could run out of the desk towards you, walk across the corridor, and greet you as you came in through the door. And it was a very small thing, but an amazing welcome. And I just remember thinking, God, this is a really special, like, little hospitality moment that you instantly feel you're being welcomed. And I remember. But then, sorry, I've mentioned two fancy hotels. So let me mention another one, another really special experience, because it's more recent, which is a very small B&B called Granville House in the Berkshires, so north of New York City, a couple of hours near Great Barrington. It, I think, maybe only has 4 or 5 rooms, and the welcoming feel you get is like nothing else, and there's a reason for it, and this is a place that people should go and seek out. You should try and go and stay there. The reason why it's special is because the 2 owners, Terry and Terry, male and female, but both with the same first name, they both worked for Danny Meyer, the famous New York restaurateur, for like 15, 20 years at some of the top restaurants in New York City. So one of them, I think, was the Maitre d' the Gramercy Tavern, really famous, really special restaurant. And the other one was running operations for Union Square Cafe. So the 2 of them have been absolutely at the pinnacle of restaurant hospitality, at the best of the restaurants in New York City for a long time. And so they really know how to make you feel at ease and welcomed in their B&B. It really is a special experience. And actually there's something all the more special because it's small and it's their home, right? So that's fabulous. If only we could make all hotel visits feel like you were visiting someone's home.
Yeah. And even like looking to trends, I mean, like personalization, it's one of those buzzwords that you hear like all the time. And I think sometimes it's kind of misconstrued or like associated exclusively with like technology and like these fancy, CRMs and data, and doing all this like online. But even, I don't know, that you kind of overlook the basics that, actually it's human, it's the human touch as well, and like having those thoughtful, remembering someone's name, welcoming them back, rather than, oh, it's your first time here or not, like
yeah,
show us your ID, kind of thing.
I think maybe one,
yeah.
Sorry, it's interesting. There's something I haven't thought enough about, but whenever I think about personalization and the extent to which we really can personalize like someone's web experience or booking experience or hotel experience, I'm often a little bit saddened because it feels very surface level, very small level bits of personalization we can do. But actually, when I think about the experiences I've had at hotels, it actually can be really small. It can be the guy walking out from the desk and making you feel like a human again. It can be the single usage of, like, I can think of the times when I've been in hotels and you walk down to the front desk, you met that person yesterday, and they use your name, and it like surprises and delights me. And it's literally once in a hotel stay. So it's amazing how it can be the smallest of personalization demonstrates the greatest of care and completely changes your experience. So I think that's maybe a positive, good takeaway.
Yeah. And I think to your point, and sort of onto the next like topics that we're going to start looking at further on in the discussion, well now actually, is I guess also the advantage of having like, I guess prioritizing that direct business and prioritizing those direct relationships with guests helps you understand better like what, would resonate or what would, I guess to your point, surprise and delight, in some way. And so kind of going on to that point, and also to your point earlier about how our industry has evolved so much, with, consumer behaviors changing all the time and so on. We saw actually, I don't know if it was the same for you, but like on our side, like especially during like the COVID and like all the lockdowns and stuff, there was kind of this shift, of more guests like booking directly with hotels, like, and we saw like a huge growth with that. But like, obviously now things are back to normal, the OTAs are back to their, usual strategies and very, big like marketing tactics and so on. But in looking at the consumer specifically, like how do you expect like how do you see like the trends shaping up in 2025 on how they will like guests will book travel, and what is some like takeaways I guess that hotels could start thinking about in that sense?
I don't necessarily expect any huge changes in 2025 compared to the years before. I think we see some gentle trends one way or another, but nothing that's absolutely revolutionary. Despite all the AI stuff, I think 25 is going to be similar to 24. I think it's one of the challenges with talking about sort of trends and averages is it immediately kind of feels like it takes away from the fact that no, we're talking about many different people who have many different preferences, and each one of them needs to be thought about individually. So yeah, sure, we probably see an unfortunate trend of like 0.5 percentage point of direct moving towards OTAs, or something might happen this year because OTAs aggression in advertising and various things. But ultimately there are people who will always book via OTAs, and they're loyal to their Expedia, sort of rewards program, and that's a reason they're going to keep doing it. And there are people who will always massively prefer booking direct, even if the website experience is awful. They'll go through the pain of that booking experience because they just want to have a direct relationship with the hotel in case something goes wrong. And then there's those in the margin that are moving around. So I guess my first thought is always like a warning whenever I think about these like big evolutions is it can remove us from thinking about, no, there are different people in different situations with different preferences who need to be spoken to in different ways, and we need to like keep that in mind first and foremost. So I guess maybe one accelerating trend, I think, and I see it planning trips with my 17-year-old, is she her immediate start when I said, oh, we might be going to Spain, is okay, I'm going to go and look up all of these options and the different hotels and the things I can do on TikTok and or on Instagram, and it's like an immediate into social for helping define the things that we would do and where we would stay. I guess, and maybe tied into that a little bit is, there has been very clearly a trend over the last 5 years towards hoteliers' realization that many guests are coming to their hotel because of an experience that they want to fulfill or something they want to do, and the hotel is kind of adjunct to that. And that both provides opportunities for upsells, but also like it provides some real direction for the marketing. If people are coming for a certain concert or a certain activity, then making sure that you're marketing your hotel around that is obviously an opportunity. So I'm not sure I've answered your question particularly well. I think we're going to see a lot more of the same, a lot more chat about AI, not much like action going on in terms of how it changes customer booking behavior. I mean, like, so for example, for a recent trip, I used Google Gemini Deep Research, which is, I think, been the first of the proper deep research tools. OpenAI just brought theirs out this weekend, but the Google one's been around now for a month or so. That is an amazing tool for going out and identifying places you want to go and things you want to do. It is a long way from being the tool I would trust to go make a booking for me. So it's going to be at least another year before I think those tools are doing that well. And even when they're doing it well, it will then be another 2-3 years before people adopt them, where we actually see percentage points of bookings coming from them. So I think those things are exciting. They're really important. They're going to change the world, but probably not in 2025.
And do you notice, like, has there been any kind of shift in your view, like in terms of, because obviously like after the restrictions and the lockdowns kind of started easing away, there was just this explosion of demand and travel, and almost, I guess, what they call the revenge travel. And do you expect that to kind of calm down now a bit, or will that continue? And
I think revenge travel is over. I think the revenge travel thing's done. We've had 2 years of that. It's over. I think now we're moving into different reasons for travel, like experiences, travel. I think there's an interesting trend around my kind of generation, X, and then boomers, doing traveling in groups, or often like it's guys on a guys trip. They're maybe in their 40s or 50s, but they're trying to like do that every year and go to a place women doing a girls trip. Again, boomer generation, they've got the time and the money to do that. So I think though those kind of trips are actually picking up quite significantly. I believe I saw some research from Priceline on those two cohorts as being drivers of new travel styles, those segments. But yeah, no, I think the revenge stuff is over.
Yeah. And sort of something that I guess on a related note, but is quite interesting to see, I guess, because obviously there were like the new laws and stuff that were introduced in Europe, and that Booking.com, in terms of rate parity and this kind of stuff, it's hotels actually can, kind of, I guess, contest that a bit. But surprisingly, I don't know if there's like, in your opinion, if you see sort of like I don't know if a lack of awareness is like the too much of a strong term, but like, I don't know, what would be sort of your advice to hotels like in this kind of shift, and then also, to kind of adapt and
yeah, I have to say, I think there have been moments in the last year I was rather dismayed by the lack of awareness or interest of these really important regulations. There was one EU feedback event I was involved in where the impression was that other hotel tech providers just simply, there was 3 out of sort of 10 knew what was going on, and the rest were just not really engaged. And that's a real shame, because there's a really big impact on hotels. So the DMA legislation in particular. So there's kind of that affects 2 specific businesses so far. Google, who then, when they became a gatekeeper, changed Google Hotel Ads, and that's had a really big negative impact on hotels. This kind of slightly strange vertical search service need to represent everyone so that Google doesn't get all the business. The solution that they came up with, and it's under all sorts of challenging assumptions about what the legislation really was about, really going to do. The solution has been really poor for hotels. Probably we've seen a drop of like 20 to 30% of bookings coming from Google Hotel Ads as a result of this change driven by the legislation. So I think the legislation, probably a lot of it, there was support for because they thought, oh, this will also be good for hotels. And I think it's not been. It's been the opposite. It's been great for OTAs. I'd hoped that when the DMA was going to apply also to Booking.com, and Booking.com was kind of a gatekeeper, I'd hope that they were going to comply in the way that Google had, which is like, okay, here's the legislation, here's all the requirements, here's what we go and do, and it has quite a big impact. So far, my personal point of view is that what Booking have proposed is far from sufficient, but it doesn't surprise me, because for Google, this is a unfortunate challenge they've got to deal with that represents 3% of Google's global business. For Booking.com, this unfortunate regulations they have to deal with, is a serious, major impact potentially if they allow the legislation to go too far. So I feel like they've really damped down what they ought to be doing, in my opinion. And we'll wait and see. Right now, it's kind of live for the EU to give feedback on Booking's proposals, and we'll find out in the coming months. But yeah, I personally consider Booking.com as delivering an advertising service for hotels, and so therefore they should be complying with a whole bunch of those regulations that are very specific about what advertising services are meant to do. Booking.com argue something else, and that's life. That's part of this industry. There's a lot of co-opetition, and everyone has their own stakeholders they need to please, and I understand why they would want to interpret it differently.
Yeah. And sort of factoring that in, but then also, I guess, because with the evolution of our industry, also the way that, guests are booking, and kind of the new trends and all of that combined, what would be, in your opinion, like some of the most effective, I guess, digital marketing and sales strategies that hotels can consider and adopt this year and also going into the future, in order to, I guess, be agile to these changes, and also to meet guests where they are and actually stand out and grow their direct business?
Great question. So I think very often hoteliers kind of feel a little bit pushed when thinking about digital strategies into very channel-based thinking. Oh, are we happy with our performance on paid search? Are we happy with our performance on meta search? Should we change our agency or do something in Meta, Instagram or something? And I think that holds hotels back. So I think the first thing I'd say when it's about digital strategies to drive direct is, you need to start, as with all classical marketing, with the guest first. The guest you're trying to target, the audience, the segment. Who are you trying to speak to, and what is the message you're trying to deliver? Often different audiences, different segments at different times. But starting there, right, being strategic, and then coordinating all of the marketing behind that. So the channels have to come secondarily to the audience and that audience targeting approach. So I think the first thing that hotels could be doing better or improving is really enforcing and making sure they're kind of like looking at the world in that way. So understanding the audience and then thinking about what are the multiple channels that we can speak through in the same way to this audience, and then making sure that they're getting like attribution across those channels, that they're setting up a consistent campaign across those channels, and so they can measure it, tweak it, and improve it. And so I think at the moment hoteliers tend to have 4 or 5 different relationships with different vendors, and it's just like even if they have one vendor doing those things, the cross-channel attribution is very poor. And I think cross-channel campaigns is kind of rather limited. People are still pretty much setting things up individually. So I think that's the starting point, is like, let's really be guest first, audience segment first, then and then work backwards. And then I guess to round it off, the other part of that is when you approach it in that way, you then also start with, okay, well, how do we improve our targeting of these audiences? And a lot of that comes down to breaking down the silos of data that hoteliers have. Today, best in class like marketing for hotels is, if I spend $1 on this advert, what am I going to get back from the person who books from their first booking? But if if you're a hotel in Paris and you know that someone booking you from Nice is likely to return 3 times, someone booking you from London is very unlikely to ever return, then the fact that they both spend 100 euros on the first trip is neither here nor there. What you want to understand is that person from Nice is going to be worth 300 euros over time, that person from London only 100 ever. And so you should be spending based on the lifetime value of those guests, not just that first initial win. And I just don't think hoteliers are even thinking like that, because it's really hard to, because the data about lifetime value is kind of locked in a PMS, and it's very rarely being used by digital marketing partners. So like, I think that's the other thing. When you go we want to be able to go guest, audience, segment kind of first before the channels, and then you want to really be really good at understanding who that audience is, everything about that audience. A key part of that is over time making sure you're adding in the PMS data, the lifetime value, sort of guest interest data as well. So I think that's a very long-winded answer to your short question.
No, but it's a good answer. And I think the only thing I would say is, I think sometimes with especially with like sort of independent and boutique hotels and stuff, sometimes I think when you speak to them about trends or things that should be done or ways to adapt, it sometimes sounds like maybe like an overwhelming list of things and factors to consider. And so I know there's not an easy answer to this question, but like, in what ways would you see or recommend in terms of, I guess, simplifying or prioritizing where to start and kind of, working from there in terms of strategy for these hotels?
Okay, very difficult, because we all start.
I appreciate it's not an easy question. So
because definitely for some hotels, the place to start is you need a new booking engine, or you need to fix that first, because if you haven't got a good mousetrap and you aren't able to convert people who actually arrive, they're not able to run searches and see results quickly and simply and easily make a decision on their rooms and check out. If that's not working, forget all the marketing you're doing. Like get that thing to work first. And so we provide a whole bunch of benchmarking data on what like good conversion rates look like. There's a load of that out there. You can speak to other hoteliers, but you definitely need just start by just checking when people come to our booking engine, are they converting? The thing I always start with is, because people just don't do it enough, is be the guest. right? Pick up your phone. Imagine you are, your standard archetypal guest. Okay, I'm German, so I'm going to browse my website in German, sorry, and I'm going to imagine I have 3 kids, because most of our guests are Germans with 3 kids, and I'm then going to try to go through the process of booking and just do it. It only takes 5 minutes, but boy, does it like jump out at you. Where you go, oh wow, I'm because I'm thinking in the mind of my guest. I'm actually wondering about which room I should have for my 3 kids, and do I get a double bed or single bed, and what does a pull-out bed look like? And you suddenly realize your website, your booking engine may not be delivering the information that guest needs. So I'd start with that before anything, and then I think, yeah, again, it's kind of looking at low-hanging fruit. Often for a lot of hotels, that is a parity issue. You can have a great website, you can have a great hotel, people want to come and stay with you, but guess what? People make 2 decisions, and they are 2 separate decisions. They first decide on which property to stay at, and they secondly decide which channel to book on. And so when they're making that booking decision, everything is driven by price. And so if you haven't got good parity, you might get the booking to your hotel, but they're going to go do it via Expedia, and it's going to cost you 20%. So making sure you've got good parity would be another key thing to focus on. And then it comes down to what is your performance like on various channels is an easy place to benchmark. But again, I'd always come back to go and try and experience it like a guest. Think of those 3 key segments you target. Start where they would start. Go and start on Google, run a search, look for the hotel, try and go through the experience. That's when it's where do we start? Like, you got to start with that actual, what's the guest experiencing today?
Well, let's say, I don't know, I'm a guest and I'm looking and I'm planning my trip, and I'm on like Instagram or, booking.com or one of these like channels. And I find a hotel that looks interesting and I go to the website to learn more. At that stage of the journey, what would be your recommendations on, I don't know, 2 or 3 things, possibly more, that hotels could do to actually encourage those conversions to be on the website and not, on another channel?
So immediately my first thought is, well, I'm trying to gauge what stage of the process you're in, right? So are you in the deciding on the hotel, in which case I know standard data is 95% of the people who visit your hotel website aren't going to book, so the vast majority, and that's because a lot of them are top of funnel and they're still deciding if it's right for them. Or if it's someone who's like just gone on, they know the name of your hotel, they know they want to stay, so they've gone on Google, they've searched by name, and they've arrived on meta search. Just as like a simple way, we have some algorithms that actually tell us within like a minute if someone's on the hotel website, what's their likelihood to book, and we use a clever bit of AI to go, okay, these high or low likelihood to book. So if it's someone who's low likelihood to book, they're in that top of funnel, the kind of things they're looking at and doing, then actually my number one thing I'd be trying to do is make sure I capture their email address. That's it. Like that is the main goal. So the main goal is make sure they're interested in your hotel, and number 2, have a way of following up. If, however, it's someone lower funnel, then capturing emails, the last thing I want. I just want them to have a really smooth, quick process to check out, and I want to make sure that number 1, I'm not getting in their way, and then number 2, I'm providing a reason to book direct. So I'm jumping around a bit, but the reason to book direct, obviously, number 1 would be price, and then there are other benefits. We see hotels just articulate the benefit of booking direct in many different ways. One hotel that said book direct and get a free pineapple, I always remember. But there are some that are using. There's a company in the US, Lassie, for example, who have a whole bunch of like rewards that you can get book direct, and you can choose a Starbucks voucher or a free Uber lift from the airport. So there are kind of plays like that. There's a company based in Spain, Hotelverse, where the way they try to encourage people to book direct is actually you can pick your room. A little bit like the reason to book on an airline direct is you get to choose your seat. It's like you get to see the view out of the room and choose that very specific room as part of the book direct process. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do there. But the number 1 is make it simple and easy. That's actually, if you've got the best price or the same price and it's easy to book, that's kind of key. And then earlier up in the funnel, sorry, just throwing out like AI. Everyone's excited about AI these days, so let's give a really specific thing. If I ran a hotel in Vienna today, I can tell you without question, I would be targeting. I would have a goal, which is everybody who arrives on my website who isn't like immediately going to the booking engine or who doesn't have a high propensity to convert today. So maybe they're looking at long lead times, whatever it is. My goal with those people is to, yes, get them interested in the hotel, and two, get their email. Like, I need to have a first party data relationship with as many people as possible, because emails are value. Like, there really is a way to communicate with people and excite them about a stay and get them to book. And so one of the simple things I'd be doing right now is I'd say it is February the 5th today, we're speaking, in Vienna. People who are searching from, I don't know, the UK, let's say, foreign overseas guests generally have a 30-day lead time. I'm inventing these numbers. But so that means if it's 5th of February, they're probably looking to stay at the start of March, and maybe also the start of April. So I might have a pop-up, right? You've browsed 4 pages. I'm going to do a little pop-up, and it says, find out the top 6 things to do in Vienna in the first week of April, or whatever it happens to be, or March. So yeah, pick that useful lead time. You can create a downloadable PDF on 5 great things to do in Vienna in 0 time, for like basically for 0 cost, actually, on a bunch of these LLMs. You can do this so easily. You can have a nice picture of Vienna on the front. It's a PDF. It literally takes you 10-15 minutes to set that up, and then you've got something of value you're giving people back for their email. And hopefully, if those things are close to the hotel, you can put them on a map as well. You can always take this further, but the simple thing to do would just be have something of value to provide in return for an email, because then you can start a conversation, and that can really help you drive people direct.
Yeah, and even in terms of getting more of that real-time data, like rather than the historical reports and all this kind of stuff that we, I guess has been not a scourge, but yeah, it's a bit of a, I guess, kind of pulling in those historical demands that are not super relevant, and kind of, I guess people need to start thinking about like leveraging these tools a bit more to get more of that, I guess, real-time scenarios on these things. We spoke a little bit about this earlier, and like I guess looking at personalization as being, and I guess, we see like studies, like multiple studies of, guests and consumers overall, just kind of having more of a heightened expectation to get these like tailored experiences and so on, which can also, back to the point of, I guess, things seeming a bit complex or a bit overwhelming, especially for like independent brands and, properties and so on. What would be your advice, I guess, to kind of provide more of those tailored experiences to guests? And then I guess not really relying too much on technology, but kind of combining it with like the human touch to kind of deliver those experiences to guests.
So, Andy, do you mean in the booking process online pre-stay, or the guest experience on stay?
Well, we could look at all the stages. Maybe we could start with like the first time shopping experience. Once the guest is at the hotel. So I mean, we focus a lot on, again, audiences, different segments. So one of the things we do is when we see every person that's visiting a hotel website or booking engine, we're tracking them. And we're tracking what they do, we're tracking their interests, we're tracking what we can. But we're also using other third-party data sources to identify like interests that guests have, and it's possible to go target guests like this, or to uncover people's interests using third-party data. So we're so one of the things we're doing is definitely trying to understand and intuit whatever we can. Maybe someone searches for a week-long stay and 2 rooms, so we go, okay, well, they're almost certainly traveling with a family, or maybe it's a midweek stay and it's 1 night or 2 nights, and then they feel more like a business booker. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do to help understand them, and then you can personalize messages they might get throughout the experience, or offers you might show them when they're online. I'm much less of an expert in how to like really personalize and deliver amazing guest experiences on property. It's just not my area, I'm afraid. I think there's a really interesting crossing point that it's funny, I do find when I'm looking at other hotel tech vendors, other people in the space, we tend to fall into pre-stay, driving bookings, or on property. And there's a few people like kind of making moves, sitting somewhere in the middle. PMSs like Muse are trying to make a real effort of like
joining both, but it tends to be the companies are strong in one area or another. And yeah, I don't know that I've got a huge amount I could teach hoteliers about how to make the on-property experience more special and more personalized, apart from just the own individual inspirations I've had experiences myself.
Well, do you think there's a way, and like, okay, maybe it's not in the sense of like loyalty, maybe not a lot of independent hotels implement this, but like, for example, using, I guess, first party data to make like scenarios and kind of be like, okay, these are our segments, and then kind of tailor those strategies around that. Do you think there's some room or opportunities there?
Oh, that absolutely. That is something that is kind of our bread and butter, is trying to understand individual guest needs and then personalizing things to them. I mean, and it can be as little as we know what dates they've searched for. So if we know what stay dates someone's got, then if we're going to run paid advertising to retarget these people, or if we're going to send them an email because they downloaded something and we're going to follow up, or they went all the way through purchase and they didn't end up clicking, and it's like a reselling shopping cart abandonment email, we are going to use the dates that that we know they're interested in, and we're going to say, you looked at these dates, here's the updated prices for these dates, would you like to book? So it can be as small as that, and it can be as large as, well, we know you were interested in golf because you seem to spend an inordinate amount of time looking at the golf pages on our website, and so we're going to make sure we talk to you about a golf offer. And I think definitely we're just constantly looking for those little signals, and sometimes the signals happen, as it were, in the same place that you deliver the personalization message, but then sometimes actually it's because you're working across channel that you get the signal of interest from something they did in, I don't know, paid search, or ad they clicked on in display, and you use that to inform personalization in a different place. So I think that's one of the things that should be a really significant change in 2025. I slightly hesitate to call it out because I feel we've been looking for this one for years, but is using the data that you get in one area of communication with a guest across different data silos and then into another area. I think that is something which it ought to be possible for us as an industry to make very big strides on quite quickly. And I think I know that we're planning to see a lot of that in 2025, but I don't want to overpromise because I feel like we've been waiting for PMSs to open the gates for quite a while.
And do you see some opportunities in terms of like AI, and like how, in your opinion, could hotels, like, I guess, consider leveraging AI, and like, I guess in a way that, because I know like up until like the last like 2 or 3 years or something, for me, whenever I think of like AI in the context of hotels, I think of like a chat bot. And sometimes, these things, I mean, for me personally, putting myself in the consumer's shoes, whenever I'm confronted with something like that, I'm like, oh, connect me to a human as soon as possible, please. So I guess like sort of in other ways, like what would other opportunities is like AI creating, and how can hotels like consider leveraging that to deliver these more customized, tailored experiences to their guests?
This is a big topic. There's loads of areas of this. So I think what have we seen is traditionally, like in a specific area, like revenue management, the use of algorithms to like drive much better predictions about occupancy and pricing decisions. So I think that will continue. It's the obvious thing, right? That we get the next 2 years of AI innovation is rather specific to individual vendors in the hotel tech ecosystem who provide it as part of their solution. It's like, I think a week from after OpenAI first opened their API, we installed it in our system so that if you were going to create a message that was personalized, you could have 3 or 4 suggestions from the AI of what to put in the message. That's kind of like the easy thing to do, and I expect to see more of it. The more exciting, I think, is definitely AI agents bringing data together across hotel tech platforms, and that's something which we've been playing with ourselves for a while. I think we'll be talking about a lot more in the next month. So I was talking to a hotelier this morning, and we're building him a little AI agent where we're going to be watching for check-ins at the hotel. So this is someone is has booked and is arriving from a business URL. Their email address has a business name that they haven't had at the hotel before. So the really simple AI agent is just going to go, oh, IBM, they've not booked to your hotel before. Please send an email to the director of sales and marketing to say there's a guy checking in from IBM tomorrow. And we know IBM's a big company and they have this many employees, they have these offices nearby our hotel. So maybe you want to chat to him when he arrives in the lobby, or send him a follow-up email to make sure he had a good stay. So just like really little things like that, where we're going to take the data from the PMS, and then we're going to send an email to the director of sales and marketing. I do expect to see a lot more of those kind of smart, simple AI agent implementations. It's kind of like a bridge. I think those are going to be a bridge for the next 2 years before we get to really well integrated systems. So yeah, I think there'll be a bunch of those. And we have a whole list that we're doing for other hotels, and then we're doing them as side projects just for fun to kind of show them what's possible. Yeah, I think there'll be a few.
That's very cool. And I have to say that's something that, and I think to your point of what you mentioned earlier about like planning travel and things like that. I mean, having tools that you can kind of have very, pointed questions and get very pointed answers, and then, act on those things like more efficiently. It's definitely a value add there.
Yeah, I think that's because I was just at an event last week, and everyone on the stage talks about AI, and it was very upsetting because not apart from the revenue managers who said, and it's in our system, everyone was just talking about, oh, it's going to change everything, and it was all hairy fairy, and I hate that. I want, like, I know hoteliers want to know, is there something I can do today in an hour that will save me an hour every week forever? Great, I want to do that. And it's those like quick wins is the first way to like build momentum and to get things changed. And there are so many quick wins with this. So I think that's something that, yeah, we need to help people uncover.
And sort of keeping on the topic of AI, like as it kind of infiltrates more of like the online search experience, and like with the tools that like Google is rolling out and things like that, how do you expect that to sort of impact, I guess, like, hotel visibility on these channels? And is there anything that they should be doing or considering now to adapt and make sure that they are still visible and present and in light of these changes?
Yeah, so I mean, this is fascinating. There are so many changes so quickly. I mean, new models and new ways of working every month are changing, and so it is hard to make predictions. But one specific thing I'd say is if you're concerned about like ranking and traffic from Google, because as people start doing more AI-driven type searching, there are a million videos you can go and watch on YouTube. They're being updated every single week by YouTubers on here's how to do SEO in the age of AI. And I just say go watch one of those. There's another really good video, our direct booking summit last year in Chicago. Alex from Westgate Resorts, who I think is one of the smartest paid search people on the planet when it comes to hotels paid search. He talked a lot about that, and this is over a year ago, how he was using AI in every single step of his paid search. And there's a video that I think in the TripTease YouTube channel that's worth watching. Although it's massively out of date already, it's probably still well in advance of 95% of hoteliers. So how to split up various bits of the like what you're doing in paid search using automations. I think the thing that I kind of expect is that I fear it might be a bit like when mobile websites started taking off and the importance of mobile became really clear, and also a bit like people having mobile apps. In both of those situations, I think the response of far too many hoteliers was, oh, we're going to have something completely separate and completely different. There's a new need, so let's go solve it by building a website just for mobile. And then, after 3-4 years, it was like, actually, no, we can have one website that works for both. That is a better long-term solution. So I suspect we'll go through the same cycle. There will be like, oh my God, what are we doing in AI? We need to build for the bots. Let's build for the bots so that the bots rank us. And we basically built a website that has everything the bots need. And then, and I suspect that might happen. I'm merely hypothesizing. My suspicion is that would happen. And then 2 years later, everyone would go, wait a second. The bots were specifically designed to work in a human world in the way humans do. And so, in fact, the whole thing, building for the humans, is building for the bots. And let's just do that right. Now, I'm not sure. I'm yet to see. There's somewhere in the middle we'll probably find. Like one of the things that when I think about what might happen if I'm using my Gemini deep research or OpenAI deep research, and it says, okay, go find me a hotel in Madrid. Ultimately, this is still a high jeopardy purchase. Like, I'm about to spend a load of money online. It may be non-cancelable. It's expensive. It's 1,000 miles away from me. I want to be sure I'm making the right decision, especially if I'm traveling with my family and I want to make sure they're all happy. In that instance, I really do want a lot of information. I definitely also want it to be visual. So I then think, well, does that mean ultimately I still get to the point where I go, well, I want to go back to the hotel website to really get a feel for this place myself? Maybe. I think the only other thing that I think I'd want that maybe is something we can arm the bots with is the bots are being trained to be really good at understanding my preferences and needs. So the bot should be going out on behalf of me, looking for the things that matter to me. And it knows a certain bunch of things about me, right? So then in that world where preferences can be known, then it feels like really exciting potential for the hotel website to deliver back to any bot against those preferences. Oh, okay, so Charlie is this age and has these interests. Please give him these photos about the hotel, or here's an automatically AI created, instantly generated video that should speak perfectly to a guy in his 40s living in America who wants to come to our hotel. And so those content pieces that go back to the bot, I think are really interesting, because I definitely don't think at the moment, right, all those those research bots bring back tables. They'll create a table of text, and they're not really bringing back images. But if I'm booking a hotel, I want those images. I want it to be video even better. So I think there might be that hoteliers need to create systems that will produce content on the fly, very targeted, that bots can take back to their bosses. But I'm hypothesizing. Who knows? It's hard to be certain.
It all sounds very science fiction as well. Take back to the boss.
Yep, and it's going to be here in 3 years. I mean, that is the extraordinary thing. One of the most amazing things right now is all of the leaders of all the major AI companies are all in unison saying we will have AGI in 3 to 5 years. Like, there's real consistency in their expectations, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see, and it will be interesting to see how it unfolds. I'll be here, with my popcorn, watching it unfold. So we're actually we've come to the end of our time for today. But just before you go, in light of sort of looking to the future and not speculating, but also kind of seeing how the trends play out. But then even in your own life personally, what are you looking forward to the most, like in the next months or year, and why?
I am absolutely looking forward to seeing how this plays out. It's I don't know, there must be a word for it when humans think they're living in the most important time in the history of mankind, but by God, it feels like we might be living in a Renaissance period, and it's going at lightning speed. And so I just love it. I mean, I'm a massive technophile, and I think it's amazing what is being achieved. And it's fascinating. It's scary as hell, particularly when you have kids and you think about futures of careers, and that's all discombobulating. But then we also have a history, of the last 300-400 years of technical innovation merely raises everybody's living standards and creates jobs. It never feels like it at the time, but it does in the long run turn out that way. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I am fascinated and excited to see how this evolves.
Yeah, and I mean, even certain things that might become obsolete, I mean, it opens doors for new opportunities, and I'm sure, there will always be places or vacancies that, gaps that need to be filled in terms of human talent and so on. So, yeah.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Or the bots will take over, I don't know. But yeah. Anyways, well, Charlie, it was really great to have you, and thanks really for joining us today. And I really learned a lot from this conversation. It gave me a lot of food for thought, and I'm sure our audience will benefit from it as well. So thank you, and thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.